and welcome everyone to A New Money Consciousness with Maureen O'Shaughnessy. Maureen joined us not long ago to tell us about Reiki, and we're really happy to have her back to talk about a new money consciousness. Go ahead, Maureen.
Hi, thanks, Kat. This is really fun. I really love talking with the Awkwardly Zen community about Reiki. And one of the other things I do is what I call intuitive guidance. It's not doing psychic readings, but rather my gift is more being able to connect to what I think of as your higher wisdom or your inner guidance. And I just get to be the voice for that. So people's questions prompt my access to be able to tap into those answers. And so as part of the question and answer period near the latter part of our time together, I will actually shift into my intuitive place. So I come from that wisest place to be able to respond to your questions. And while I've done this individually with people, and I do coaching programs using intuitive guidance, I also have done group programs, and I started them on Zoom during the pandemic, like a lot of people. And so I've just decided to keep them monthly. They're free for anyone who wants to join. And if you'd like to receive my newsletter, which gives you an announcement about upcoming gatherings and other things I offer, please put your email address in the chat. You can keep it private by sending it privately to me. And Kat, just as a note, I would like to be able to, great, thank you, I'd like to be able to get the chat also at the end so I can get all the addresses and things. Thank you. And so this new money consciousness that became a topic evolved out of questions people had asked in my intuitive gatherings. And the answers that came through really surprised me and shocked me, because it's kind of really what I would say leading edge, if you want to call it that. And so I'm going to sort of lead into some of the bigger or more different aspects of this new money consciousness. So I want to start off by just talking about what are some of our cultural norms. So think about your thoughts about money. And I'm going to just name a few to see if they trigger thoughts about ideas and thoughts about money, and see which ones resonate true for you and what ones may not. Doesn't matter, but just to get a sense of what is our broad cultural consciousness around money these days. So some of our cultural norms are, we were taught to get the most value for our dollar, get the most out of every dollar. A penny saved is a penny earned. Lack of money is shameful. Some people experience that. Also, you may see people who feel motivated or inspired to strive for that almighty dollar, that success equals the money. Other people have been taught money is evil or money is power. Another thing is to avoid taxes at all costs. And money is security. And so think about, what are your beliefs related to money? And there'll be a spectrum. And if you plan to take notes, it might be fun to jot down just some of the ideas, some of the common thoughts or feelings about money. And also, what is your relationship with money like? Is it one of ease, fear, lack, fun, gratitude? So, in fact, I'm going to take a moment to talk about lack, because that is a big consciousness. So, Kat, can I have the next slide, please? And this is just to illustrate the point. But different signs of lack. So someone has their hand up. I'm not sure what they were asking about here. So lack is a very prevalent perspective about money in our culture. And I would say, I personally know people who are multimillionaires, who have lots of assets, lots of income, and they're still feeling like they don't have enough. It's not enough. There's other people that the focus is on, I never have enough, or jealousy about other people having more than them, or the anxiety that we have, will I have enough? So this lack of money, thanks, Kat. I don't want to burn it into people's brains. And so just to illustrate it. So there's somebody has her hand up, but Miriam, but I'm not able to help her. Maybe someone else can chat with her. Anyhow, with this lack perspective, there's some subtle things, like the idea that we have to get the most for our dollar and get the best price, the most value for our dollar. And actually, when we, how can I say this? When we interact with money, when we're using money or receiving money, so sometimes people feel awkward being gifted with money or awkward asking for money. There's a lot of charge or awkwardness around it. Not like the awkwardly Zen. That's a safe place to feel wherever you're feeling. But there is often, some of my Reiki students, I talk in the Reiki class about being aware of an exchange of energy if they're taking an hour to give someone a treatment. And it can be a gift, obviously, but also to recognize that receiving something in exchange for giving someone a treatment has value. And I would say the larger percentage of my Reiki students find it so much easier to give and give people treatments and give their time and energy to somebody than it is to receive, especially if they're asking for it. So think about that too. And what's your own personal relationship about asking for money? What comes up for you? Just all these little things show up. And if we don't have ease and gratitude with money, why not? So we've had experiences of lack. We were taught about lack, whatever it is. It can be all sorts of things. So I want to move forward into money is energy. So what if there isn't really a lack of money? What if it is our attitude, our consciousness about money that literally creates our perception and experience of lack with money, if anyone is experiencing any lack at all, right? What if it's our thoughts, our beliefs about money that hold back an abundant flow? And I had this thought as I was thinking about talking about this, and way back in the late 80s, 1986 to 88, I was a broker at Merrill Lynch in Honolulu, and which is a far cry from being my freewheeling Reiki master, intuitive guide person now, but it was part of one of my previous lives in this body. And so while I was a broker, and this was in the late 80s, I remember people betting in the office when the Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to reach 10,000. And it was kind of like this benchmark, for the couple of years I was in that office. And from 1982 to the peak in 1987, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose from 776 to 2,722, which was a 69% year-to-date increase in 1987. And then there was Black Monday, October of 1997, 10 years later, roughly. And Black Monday wasn't the end of abundance in the stock market. Instead, in March of 1999, just a couple of years later, it actually reached where was it? 10,000, March of 1999. So just a few years after I guess it was more than 10 years after I left Merrill Lynch. But so it crept up. Today, the most recent thing today, when I looked it up, the Dow Jones Industrial Index is over 36,000. If this index is a gauge of the wealth in our company, that is phenomenal. So, and it's not about just having the money. So all the wealthy people are wealthier and the less wealthy people have less. It's not even about that. It's not taking one pie and divvying it up. It doesn't work that way. And that's a perception we have about money, is there's only so much there is to go around. And if you have a big piece, then everyone else gets a smaller piece. Money is not like that. And so what we want to do is to start to change our perception. So if money indeed is energy, all money is, it was created. If we go back to like the Native Americans, traded and bartered, beaver pelts or whatever, and they would get various things back from the traders in the early days of people immigrating into North America. We'll just use that phrase. And so what happened is money was developed as a really easy exchange, a barter. So for example, if I wanted to do a Reiki treatment for someone and all they had was chickens to give me, and I didn't like chicken, I could get the chicken, but then I'd have to find somebody who liked the chicken and give me something else. So money is just a vehicle for that. It is really just an exchange of energy. And so when we exchange money for something, then what happens is a relationship is built and there's a flow that happens. And this story is coming up, so I'll share it. This is one of my things. I bounce all over the place because I get these stories that pop in my head. And I've learned over the years that I tell the story because it came up. So quite a few years ago, I was feeling really stressed about money. And I had a pattern where I would be like a couple of hundred short at the end of the month, waiting to cover my bills. I was self-employed, never knew how many students I would have each month and so forth. So it was living in quite a stressful place around money. And it took me many years before I was able to move out of that. But so this stressful place, was, am I going to have enough? And I ended up doing this dance where I would borrow the couple hundred I was short to cover rent or whatever bills were due from a friend. And then my next class that came in, I would pay them right back and continue on. But it happened a lot. And I felt like I was always catching up. And this woman that I was doing an energy clearing session, actually, is what she does. And she asked me, she said, well, have you ever not paid your bills? And this was like over like the past 20 years. She was talking like, over these past 20 years. And I said, no, I've been late, but I've always paid everything. I've never left anyone unpaid, any bills, right? And she says, so you are making enough. What is in the way? And so she pointed out that my worry and stress and anxiety about will I have enough was almost like a breaking and stopping the flow coming to me. And I struggled with that for a few years, even though I got it. I said, I was able to kind of relax and not feel the same amount of shame in my dancing with cash flow as I was. It was kind of my friends were a line of credit, basically, only I didn't have to pay interest and they trusted me. So it was great. But I've never not paid a bill. So I am making enough. And that was a huge epiphany. And it was like, then it was my focus, my thoughts, my tension, my energy around it that literally slowed the flow of the income that was coming in. And so I practiced it, and it's still a practice, but it is an easier practice and it's not so stressed. So now I notice when I start thinking, okay, there's not enough coming, or I start anticipating, okay, this is due. I did my taxes. I owe way more than I expected. And I started to get tense. And then I went, why worry? I could set up a payment plan. Best interest rate in the country is with the IRS. So why not? Right. So it was like, okay, that's fine. And so I let go of any of the tension and stress. So I owe taxes. I pay it. And it's that. So it's a practice of your mindset that really loosens the flow, the abundant like river of the energy that you have already generated for yourself. The other sticky thing about money is thinking that we have to work hard for it, right? Or, there's various things. Again, I'll use Reiki as an example. I have taught many Reiki or many massage therapists Reiki. And they've all often said, not everyone, but many of them have said they were uncomfortable charging the same amount for a Reiki treatment done over the same amount of time as a massage. And so I would ask them, why is that uncomfortable? And she says, well, Reiki is so much easier to do. I have to work really hard for massage. And so one of the things I pointed out is when I receive a massage or I receive a Reiki treatment and I'm paying someone for it, I'm not paying for how hard you work or how much effort you put into it. I'm paying for the benefit that I receive. And the benefit of Reiki is equal in its value to me as the benefit of a massage. They're both fabulous. And so that's one of it. Another thing, a speaker I heard talk about evidence of a, what was it said? It was really kind of interesting. It was evidence of an undercurrent of lack in our awareness about money. And it's things we were taught. And it was, it was, if you use coupons. So he told this story. So he is this big coach's coach kind of thing. But it was it really struck me when he shared this story. He said, his name will come to me later, or someone needs the name, I'll find it. I don't recall at the moment. But he was sharing the story that his wife and another couple had rented a beach house out in somewhere in North Carolina, I think it was. And so he had gone into town to go to the grocery store and pick up what they needed for their long weekend in terms of groceries. And he's in the aisle picking up something off the shelf, and a woman there in the aisle says, "Oh, here, I have a coupon on for that for you. Here, you can use it." And he's like, "Oh, no, thank you." And she says, "But it'll save you some money." And he says, "Oh, no, thank you. That's fine." And she's like, "Okay, this guy's weird." And so he continues on. He finally gets everything he wants, and he gets to the cashier, and there's this younger man at the cash register. And he says, "Do you have your whatever card, right?" And he says, "No." And he says, "Okay, I'll just use one for you." He says, "Please don't." He says, "But you'll get a lower price if you use the, frequent buyer card or whatever it was for that store." And he said, "No, thank you." And the boy says, "But you'll pay less." And he says, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "How long have you worked here?" And the guy said, "Oh, a couple of years." And he says, "So how often have you had a raise?" And he said, Not never." And he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, for the few dollars I would save on my groceries, I would much rather you get a raise." And he said, so when we're looking for a coupon to get the lowest price, who or what is, taken away to give that? He said, "I'm abundant and I have the money to pay for the groceries at the price that's marked. I can choose to pay it or not." He said, so that struck me as reminding me, and I still will occasionally do that. In fact, I will go on to something else in a minute, and then we'll get into the abundance of nature. And that is the part that we talk about, again, getting the most value for our dollar. That also implies that we don't have enough, right? I've got to get the most because I won't have enough for everything I need or want. And so one of the things I started implementing a few years ago, after having talked this concept coming out in one of my group gatherings. And so I have a friend that I rent her meeting room space to hold my Reiki classes and some of my gatherings and things. Her name's Susan, and she's a wonderful person. And Susan works really hard to create a space that's really peaceful. It has good energy. She's very selective on who she will rent her space to so that it maintains this beautiful energy. And I also know that she had originally 3 partners when she signed the lease, and then both of them over some years dropped off. So now she carries the burden of the whole lease on her own. So it's subletters. And she's got a few regulars, like a massage therapist that sees clients there and things like that. But and so what I started to do is she would send me an invoice for whatever hours I'd use the room for. And I even scolded her and told her, "You need to charge more. You're undercharged. This is, I can find places in Honolulu that are charging double the hourly rate for the space." Oh, thank you, Kat. So I would just round it up to, a nearest figure, whatever it might be. So I got an invoice from her the other day for $680 and change. So I'm going to pay her $700. And it feels so good. What is $20 really going to make a difference for me? I can go out and have, a few cocktails and spend $20, right? It's like, so why not show my appreciation and just give her $700, just round it up. There's lots of places now that will ask you if you're ordering something, and you want them to round it up to the nearest dollar and use that difference to donate money to a charity. Again, this is abundance consciousness. A little bit that I won't notice even will make a difference. And so if we start to practice feeling abundant about money and just, trust that what you need will be there. And the amazing thing is, another kind of interesting story is years ago, this would have back in 1994, I actually quit my day job. I was a corporate manager and preparing to train as a Reiki master. And I was able to do some consulting work to make a little bit of money here and there. And I went away and spent a few months away. And when I came back, was sort of getting myself settled again. And I'm still in this process of training with my Reiki master for about a year to be ready to be initiated and teach classes. And so I didn't have any reliable income. My expenses were quite low. When I left my job, I had downsized and sold a lot of things, paid off, bills. So I didn't have as big a monthly overhead. And anyhow, so I was making less money, during this year of preparation. And yet my lifestyle seemed to be almost the same. Now, obviously, when I was a corporate manager, and back then, I think my salary was like 60,000, which today sounds small, but this was back in the, early 90s. And yet I was actually bringing home maybe, 24,000 in a year. And I seemed to have plenty of money. Now, part of that was that I was not, what can I say? I didn't have the taxes to pay and things like that too. But what happened was I needed a new car. My car broke down. And a friend had a car that she was holding on to sell for someone that had moved off island and couldn't take the car with him because he still had payments. And so she was trying to sell it and I was stuck. I didn't have a car or anything. So I asked her, do you think, your friend would mind if I borrowed the car? I'll take care of it. I'll do the safety inspection, do with all these things. And I'll be driving around with the for sale sign on it and help advertise it. And she checked with him and he said, fine, no problem. So at least I had it to borrow while I got a new car and got myself together. Because it was just, by this time I was a brand new Reiki master. And so I just had my income from my classes and that was like once a month. So it was still a big stretch. But what happened is Jim, the guy who had the car, he was back in Honolulu and my friend and she invited me to come and see him. And we met for lunch with some other friends. And so I was talking and I was thanking him. I said, thank you so much for letting me borrow your car. It's been a godsend. And he says, well, why don't you buy it? I said, I quit my job. I'm starting my own practice, my own Reiki practice. And so I can't qualify for a loan. He said, well, could you make the payments? I said, sure, I'll make the payments. And he said, okay, well, why don't you take the car, make my payments? I'll give you a power of attorney to be able to put the insurance in your name. And he says, and when the payments are paid, I'll send you the title. So I suddenly got this car and it was only a couple of years old. I got a good rate because it was with his military credit union and so forth. And so I just got to make the payments and I had enough to make the payments. So things like that kept mysteriously happening. And that was back in like 1995, actually it happened. And it keeps happening in different ways. Now there are times when I can block it. I start to get stressed. Oh, I've got all these taxes to pay. Stop it. And I literally have to do that to myself sometimes. And then go, okay, I always have enough. And often it comes from really unexpected places. So just chill. And then I want to share now, in fact, Kat, can I have the next slide? Is really nature, money, the energy of money is the energy of nature. And nature is literally abundant. And I have this story for you. It's kind of a fun story, or it's an analogy, not a story, actually. And so I want you to imagine, here it comes, I want you to imagine that can't get my own thing here. That you have a tomato plant, or say you just plant a tomato seed, okay? And a plant grows up. So from this one tomato seed, you get a plant. And by the time it grows and starts blooming and having flowers, and then having these tomatoes show up, is one seed might give you, I'm just going to say, a dozen tomatoes on that plant, say in that cycle of season, right? And each of those tomatoes have what? 20, 30, 40 seeds? And if you think about it, one of those tomatoes is usually attacked by a bird who just looks at this juicy red fruit and says, oh, I need some of this. And the bird takes off and eats some of the tomato. So the bird flies away and literally poops the seeds out somewhere else. So those seeds get spread out, and there are more tomato plants that grow. And this just continues. And anyone who's had an abundant garden or fruit trees, that when the fruit's in season, you just have to give them away. There is such abundance. This is the nature of abundance. The nature is abundant, and abundance is the nature of nature. And the energy that we're exchanging, that we're using money to exchange, is still the life force. It's still the life force of nature. Okay, Kat, that was good. Thank you. And so I want you to think about that. When it's not like there's never enough, there's often more than we need. That's why people create savings. Now, there are people who will create savings from a perspective of literally, fearing, I need the savings because what if something happens? And it is nice. It's a very beautiful thing to have a cushion for the unexpected. That brings us a sense of peace of mind. And like, yeah, okay, if something unexpected happens, something blows up in my car, I can fix it. I can tap into my savings for that. So it's lovely to have that. And there are people who are very fearful and hang on to their money and, oh, I can't do this. No, I can't. This is too expensive. And so just notice the talk in our minds and notice how much is abundant and to balance out how much might be lackful. And then they sneak up on us. Even though I'm aware of this and lots of things are happening, it is really amazing how much abundance there really is. In fact, here's a tool for you. This is a fun game to play. And that is to keep some kind of a log or notebook or whatever you like. So it can be on your phone or it can be a little notebook or whatever. And for 30 days, just track any unexpected income. And when I say unexpected income, it doesn't mean that suddenly a check comes in the mail that you weren't expecting. That can happen, right? In fact, I got a $100 check in the mail unexpectedly. Someone just made a donation for me from my intuitive gathering, $100. I'm like, thank you, right? And so it can be, that abundance, but it's also little things like you find a dime in the parking lot, pick it up. And you can say, oh, what good is a dime going to do? What if that is just spirit or the universe's message to you saying it's raining money? So when we walk away from even something small, we are saying, no, I'm either ashamed to take it or it's dirty or whatever it might feel like, right? But welcome it and say thank you. So say you go to lunch with a friend and they treat you to lunch. Well, your share of your lunch is unexpected income. You write that down. And then maybe you go shopping and you find that something you had on your list that you really needed was on sale. You can say, okay, thank you. That's extra money for me, right? So it's different than only buying things that are on sale from a fear-based place or a lack place, right? I don't have enough money, so I'm going to have to wait till it's on sale. Instead of, wow, that was a gift. Don't have to pay the full price. And that's abundance. You can maybe, some of you may live in cities like I do where there's parking meters. And I can pull up a parking meter and there's 20 minutes left. I just saved 20 cents or a dime or whatever it is, right? Put that down. And if you consciously keep looking for all of this little unexpected income, that comes. And you start to keep track of it. In a month's time, it will look like something worth acknowledging, worth appreciating. And what that does, though, the magic of it, it's just a game. But what happens is it's reframing your consciousness to be expecting and looking for unexpected abundance. And so when your focus is in that way, you're literally opening the floodgates of whatever else can come instead of worry and anxious and lack. So it really is this big flow of things. And so this new money consciousness, this topic that came up in a gathering quite a few years back, got actually even deeper. So one of the things that happened is a number of people, I was offering actually some short complimentary intuitive guidance sessions back in 2009, because I was just starting to offer this work to people because it was just after this ability showed up. And so a lot of people I spoke to, especially here in Hawaii, it was a little slower happening, but the big collapse that happened in 2008, was really impacting people in Hawaii more in 2009. And there were a number of people who had lost their jobs and or were losing their house or a variety of different things like that. It was, it was a really shakeup for many people. But one of the interesting things was in 2009 with a number of the people, I would say the majority of the people that we had conversations with from the intuitive place to help them with some clarity about, losing their job unexpectedly, is frequently they would say, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. I was so unhappy in that job and I was so afraid to leave because of the fear of not having another one or enough. And so people often feel trapped even in their job because they don't see how they could get another one or where there might be another one, or even if they apply and they're not getting one, or all of those, kind of fearful things. And so think of the price we pay to stay in a job that we, really have to work to get ourselves out the door to go to that job in the morning or on the computer or whatever. And if that is the case, what holds us back? And it's not like I'm going to recommend that if you're unhappy, quit your job. There are many, many deeper solutions to come. That's not one of the only solutions. But so many people, all of the unemployment still in the people that are the, what do I say, the lack of workforce. There are signs everywhere. We're hiring. We need help, right? Creative advertising for people to hire right now since the pandemic and the unemployment stopped. And some people said, oh yeah, all those lazy people, we're collecting unemployment, and, they'll come back once the kind of unemployment's cut off. Maureen heard somebody say that on some radio station or something. But that wasn't necessarily the case because people started to get creative during the pandemic and say, I'm going to take a class. There's one person Maureen knows, he actually took a class. He worked in a restaurant. He took a class on cake decorating and started his own business and used Instagram to do his marketing. And he's busier than he was and making more money than he did as a waiter in a good restaurant, right? Doing something he loves that's creative and not having to deal with maybe jerk customers sometimes or being told what shifts he had to work, right? To some degree. Being your own business, there's also pressure there, but it's by choice, so it feels better. So what happened, so sometimes when there's a shakeup like that, is people are forced to suddenly get creative and find new things to do or just be inspired because they're no longer being, that also happened, I think, when people are no longer draining themselves by being so resistant to being where they don't want to be, is that they have no energy for something else. And so even being unemployed for a while gave them a kind of a breather and a start, and then they get to have the energy to start to be creative and be inspired for new things and new ideas and things like that. So this whole thing about changing our focus, in this intuitive gathering, this really, really interesting concept came up, and this is kind of the peak I've been building up to. And this is a what if. There was, actually, I think it was Nostradamus was one of the predictors of the collapse of the US economy. And that was, I don't know, someone might know what year it was, but it was many, over 100 years ago. And in fact, Nostradamus also had made, there was a quote around 9/11, and there was a quote when it said, the twins will fall, in one of his writings, kind of thing, literally. But it was, dozens of years or whatever it was, many years before. And so anyhow, so there was a prediction about, and others have predicted, that the US economy will collapse. So one of the things that came through in one of the questions that people asked at this particular gathering was, they asked about this. And I said, is this the collapse? Like it was after 2008, 2009, but they say, was that the collapse, or was that the precedent to the collapse? And what came through was no. 2008 and the whole market collapse that happened, I won't go into all the details, but everyone's familiar with it. What was said was that there were enough people in the United States, but around the globe, because the United States economy affects many other countries, because all of our financial flow is all interconnected, correct? And it said that there were enough people that were quietly and happily living lives of abundance. And Maureen thought of this coach's coach, right, with that thing about coupons that she saw, and thought, well, he was one of them. He was teaching people, you must live a life of abundance, and do all these things. So, but the point being is that there were enough people who had embraced an abundance consciousness in their lives, that had total ease with their finances, and were using their money in a way to express gratitude and appreciation. And so what happened is those people, as a collective consciousness, were enough to buffer the full collapse that could have happened in 2008. Yes, governments did sort of rescue things and stuff like that, but that necessarily wouldn't have been enough. And so, but when you look at our collective consciousness, our beliefs, our energy, our frequency, our relationships with money, that there were enough people on the planet that were already living in a place of ease and abundance with their money. And many of them, we would never know it. They are not the people driving, all the Maseratis and, living in multi-million-dollar condos on the beach in Hawaii or whatever. But people who just live the life they want and do the things they want and love what they're doing. They usually keep generating income, but they love what they're doing. And they literally are holding the energy for others. So if in little ways we start practicing an awareness of abundance, share, rounding things up if we want to express gratitude. Maureen loves food. She's a foodie. And so going to restaurants. She went to a restaurant last night, and it was a simple restaurant, a Vietnamese restaurant. And there was a young man who was waiting on us. And Maureen and her friend decided that he was probably in training, because he was, not quite on it. He forgot our tea and we had to ask for it twice, and, things like that. But at the end, it was like, well, it's obvious he's in training, right? It's not like he just was, lazy. And so we tipped over 20% happily. And again, what's an extra few dollars, $5 more, to give a really generous tip? Because $5, I waste $5 when I throw out groceries that I didn't eat in my fridge, right? I mean, it's like, think about it. And so if I can uplift somebody with a token of appreciation for whatever they're doing for me, why not? And so again, it's like, and again, I'm so moved by how many people who come to my free gatherings that want to send me a donation for it. And some do. And I actually just tell people, what the best donation for me is to share my gathering links with other people, invite more people, because that is the greatest thing for me, is just to connect with more people and be of service to more people, because then it's abundant. It keeps flowing. And so it's that kind of thing. So imagine a world where there isn't even a price on the things we purchase, that we just give money for whatever. And again, it's based on where we're at. So we're not going to give money that would put us, in a lack of ease place, right? In fact, there's a chiropractor who's been practicing for over 20 years in Hawaii, on Oahu, and he started his practice with a donation box. And he had envelopes, plain envelopes, and the box. And so he asked everyone to put their cash, their check, or whatever in an envelope and put it in the box. And especially if it was cash, he said, pay what you can. And he actually made his first year a really good living. He covered his lease. It was just beautiful, because people who maybe, if he was charging $100 or $125 for his treatment, people might have said, oh, I don't think I can do that this week or this month, right? But if they paid $25, great, right? So he was available and open. He came from this beautiful place, and he has still to this day a very thriving practice, and he has no set rate. But and he made it sure that it was anonymous, right? That people, whatever they paid, was anonymous, because he wanted to honor them and not have anyone feel awkward or discomfort for whatever they paid. And he was surprised that there were often envelopes with $200 in it. So again, what happens is we are living from an abundance consciousness. We also attract people in our life that also hold that or respond to it, right? Because sure, if someone who had that, I got to get the most out of my dollar, as a big value for them, they could put $10 in that box and come every week for chiropractic sessions. No one would know, right? But would they feel okay about themselves, right? Especially if the chiropractor was doing something that was really valuable to them. So imagine a world where money doesn't have power any longer, that we all have enough to get by, and we can what's the word for it? Not wish, but anticipate having more things that we desire or want to go do something and things. And there are many, many stories. There's one story of a woman in Hawaii here who's come to some of Maureen's my gatherings, and she literally had decided she really, really wanted a trip to Tahiti. And again, she was one that also, rarely had money to do the things she wanted to do, or what she felt. That's how she felt. That was her experience in her life. And she says, I have to go to Tahiti. It's a dream. I had dreams about it. I'm going to go to Tahiti. And, this went on for weeks, months, literally. And she literally won a drawing where there were like 400 people in this drawing. And she won a trip for 2 to Tahiti. Right? And she didn't know when or where, but she saw the drawing. Well, I'm going to put my name in this drawing, right? And maybe this is how I'll go. But so it was, like that. Someone else actually gifted her something else she needed for the trip, whatever it was. It sort of all came together. And so that's possible. Magical things like that happen to all of us when we pay attention, unless we're in this mindset, oh, it's hard. Oh, none of these, I got to figure this out and figure that out. When we're in that place, we're not open to receiving, and there's magic everywhere. And so test it out. And the best way to start is that example of just playing the game of unexpected income. And just see, because can you tell, can you guess what your unexpected income has been in the last 4 weeks? Probably not, because we don't keep track of it. We don't pay attention, especially if it's a quarter or even a gift of a meal somewhere, and that kind of thing. So it's the little things that often add up. And be as creative as you want to find something to acknowledge as unexpected income. So that's one of the best ways to start to shift out of these beliefs and mindsets we have around money that are really just things we were taught by our family and our culture and modeled by other people. And so there's so much potential here. I just love it. And so practice that, practice anytime you can, showing appreciation with your energy and in the form of money would be great. So I am going to take a moment And Kathy, in fact, would you put up the slide that has my website on it, and I'll talk a little bit, and then I'm going to mute for a moment, and I'm going to shift into my intuitive state, and then I will come back and be open for questions. So if you have questions, jot them down in the chat. I can see someone has a hand up. Kat, will you select the people and the questions for me, please, once I'm ready? So I'm going to mute. And oh, I just wanted to say, so if you go to my website, maureenhawaii.com, there's a link on information on Reiki. And in fact, I do travel to do classes. We've talked about maybe doing a class, you know, in some of the areas that Awkwardly Zen has groups at some point. If someone feels inspired to pull a class together, I'm open to discussing traveling to teach. I'm actually going to be teaching in Northern California, up near Yosemite, in a couple weeks for classes there. And I've traveled all sorts of places and taught. I also have intuitive guidance sessions. And I want to say, if you decide you wanted to have a private one-on-one session with me, my rates on my website are $175 for a 30-minute session. However, if you email me, instead of just going through the appointment link, if you email me and ask for a session, I will give you my friends and family rate of $100. And I usually leave an hour in my calendar just in case we run over, because I can get verbose sometimes. So I don't want to limit someone's questions. So, so you can use my friends and family rate of 100 if you would like for a session. And also on my homepage, there's a link to get a free ebook called The Thieves of Joy. And I encourage you to get it. It's short, it's fun, mostly pictures. And there's in that booklet, ebook, there are links to get a complimentary breakthrough session. And that is one where I will do a session for you, 20 to 30 minutes, that helps you identify some of your thieves of joy. And it's also to see if you are perhaps a candidate for one of my other programs. Like I do a mastermind program periodically. In fact, there's one coming up. It's only a 4-week program. I'm co-offering it with someone. So March 22nd, I'm going to do an intuitive gathering that we'll talk about. It would be exploring our intuition. And so that would be a free one, but that will also be a lead in to the 4-week program that we'll offer. So there's all that kind of information you can explore on my website, and feel free to contact me if you have questions about anything. And in fact, rather than using my website, you can contact me at maureenhawaii.com. So simple email address to remember, and Kat's probably typing it in now. And okay, now I'm going to be quiet for a moment and shift into my intuitive state, and I'll be right back to answer questions. So here we go. Okay, Kat, who's first?
Okay, well, first we had a comment in the chat I wanted to refer to. I like from Deepa. I like hearing life force. Often there is a lot of interpretation about money and worth, which complicates everything. Would you like to say anything about money and worth?
Yes, yes. That is so beautiful. Again, our culture, it's almost like when Maureen was saying, by the way, when Maureen's in this intuitive state, she talks about herself in third person. So please don't be confused. And, but she was mentioning things like the almighty dollar, or striving for it, or lack of money is shameful. So anyone who comes from less, right, is often perceives themselves as less worthy, and so forth. So there's that. And also men have a much harder time also, because in our culture, it's changing, but it's changing slowly. In our culture, it is really that, you know, their view of success, their view of their worth in our culture is often by how much money they make, or how visible their wealth is and things like that. And it's really hard on guys that were raised with that perception, and it's very unfair. But it's not just men that are like that. So there are many people that relate to that. Or Maureen remembers when she was in high school, and a lot of her friends would go skiing over Christmas break and things like that. And her family just didn't have it. Her mom's a single mom. And so Maureen did feel really left out, because she could, and here's many other kids in high school especially, or in college even, that can't afford the designer clothes or things like that allow you to be in the in group, so to speak, and things like that. So there's lots and lots of things that diminish our sense of worth, our feeling of being able to belong, even, or just be equal to others, is huge in relationship to money. All of the status things, the cars, there's different areas Maureen has gone to teach Reiki, and she's seen a difference. There's one area, Maureen won't say where it is, in one of the states she's traveled to, but it was the strongest area she'd ever been in, where almost all the students were so appearance conscious. Everyone had full makeup. Everyone had to wear, a really together outlet. They had all designer bags. They drove nice cars. They did all that kind of thing. And the interesting thing was, Maureen, is host in that city, is an artist who is completely eclectic. Wears her Crocs and whatever clothes she feels like they're really funky, right? So it was kind of fun. But Maureen could see, and the self-consciousness that people had about appearances were huge. So yes, there's a lot to be said about this, sense of worth and money. And it takes work for us to sort of undo that attitude, right? Or that belief. So thank you, Kat. I don't want to go too long. I want to leave it open for other questions too.
Okay, I'm asking Adrienne to unmute. Whoop. And then we'll take Jen after Adrienne.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this session. Amazing. I'm taking notes over here. My question is, a teacher this last week was introducing this idea of the jewels of the Tao, and specifically focusing on the second jewel, which is prioritizing and these values of moderation, simplicity, and frugality. So specifically that word frugality. And I'm realizing, just hearing your talk, that I'm needing to do some personal work, refiling that frugality out of the inherited family legacy of fear-based frugality. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, can abundance be frugal?
Well, here's what we'll say, is we believe that in the Tao teachings, again, the frugality and also, what was one of the other principles again? Because there's something else that tickled us.
Moderation and simplicity.
Moderation, yes. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, if you go back to Christian 10 Commandments, gluttony, is one of, or not, what are they, the 7 sins or something like that. Maureen's not an academic person on the Bible, but the idea of gluttony. So the moderation and gluttony are similar concepts, right? Moderation is more broad, right? It could be moderation on Netflix, right? It could be, but what we feel that they're really, the reason they talk about these principles is, again, they're not coming out of lack or fear-based, but they're coming out of people sort of being attached or obsessed about things, right? And so it's like, and so in Buddhism, for example, detachment or whatever, but it's not to not care. It's like that fear-based attachment to things. And so frugality can be more of it can be a discipline, not of not spending, all right? But if you take the essence of what frugality is really saying, it's when we're spending money for something, some shiny object that appeals to us, We can say, will this enhance my life? Will this enhance the quality of my life? Not, oh, I want this. Oh, I like this. I want to have it. Do you notice that difference? And our culture, our media, all the marketing. Marketing is really fear-based. You better buy now before it's too late. Yikes, right? And all of the things of you got to get the newest and the best. There was a commercial at the movie theater last night. Maureen was with a friend, and it was a T-Mobile commercial. And Maureen's friend was offended by it because there were some singers and musicians, and it was sort of like rescue your phone or something and get this T-Mobile account or whatever it was. But she was so offended that these musicians would taint themselves and their work by doing a commercial for a phone company. It really offended her, right? And so, but this is the kind of thing that our marketing does. And so to live by frugality can simply mean, how important is this? You know, most of you have probably heard of Marie Kondo, you know, and the simplicity. So every belonging that we have, do you love it? Does it make you happy? Does it bring you joy? I mean, it doesn't, let it go. That's frugality. So you can embrace frugality from a place of abundance also. Because the truth is, we spend money on things, you know, we buy it and then we don't ever use it. You know, it was like on a whim, or, you know, thought we would need it or whatever. So there's lots of that. Lots of that.
Thank you.
Help? We love that. Yeah. Beautiful question. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Jen and then Miriam after that.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Oh, I was wondering what you.
Oh. I think she muted instead of the camera. Okay. Are you back?
Let's see, asking her to unmute again. Here we
Oh,
go.
Start
again.
I was swiping to look for you since I'm on my phone, and I guess I muted it. So I recognize that my heritage is one of, you know, pinching pennies and make sure you have enough. So, and I've been conscious of that. But besides being conscious, how would you say we could kind of reprogram our brain and our thinking?
So it can be where you set a minimum cushion. Oh, there you are. Okay. A minimum cushion, you know, so that you have a little savings that just gives you a sense of security. So you don't have to undo all of the programming we have all at once, right? So have a cushion. And then it's just conscious. It's like, and again, kind of like, was it Adriana was her name? I forget, who's talking about the frugality and the moderation is, you know, it's more asking, will this really give me joy? So you can live from that place. And if it's, so it's like, yes, this is an absolute yes. And then you embrace that. And so you start focusing on what you do spend your money on being appreciated. So even, for example, bills. If anyone has a habit of, oh my God, I hate my bills. Why? All of these companies are offering us credit, and most of the time free for a month for our phone bill or electric bill, whatever it is, right? So these regular bills that we pay, right? Often we're given a gift of utilizing their services for a month for free. So that's something to be grateful for. So again, it's taking each little piece of like, oh, bills are hard and heavy. No, hey, I'm so glad you give me a month's credit, a month's grace. Love it. Thank you. And start just turning little things one at a time, because it's a lot to deprogram. But if you start appreciate, you can't feel anxious and lack and appreciation or gratitude in the same moment. They're opposite. And so the more we practice appreciation and gratitude, the less air time there is in our head for anxious or fearful thoughts about money. And so set yourself with a modest cushion and then work from there. And so go from there, kind of thing. Is that helpful?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next we have Miriam, followed by Deepa. Whoops.
Oh, hi, Maureen.
Hi.
Thank you so much for doing this. I think every spiritual person probably needs this talk.
Well, we all go
I-
through the journey together.
I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and my mom was really into frugality. She was actually really, really good with money. But in the way that I was raised, spirituality was on one side, money was on the other, and they really are very different from, say, the Catholic Church in the way that they take in money. And my mom taught me those attitudes. Well, right now, I run a spiritual group. I run a UFO group. And when I inherited the group, I didn't know that I was going to be working 60 hours a week for nothing. And that's what's happening. And I hate to ask for donations. I produced some t-shirts hoping that people would just kind of get it and buy the t-shirts instead of having to give donations. Anyway, that's what my issue is. It's not that I want to pay myself a salary, but it wouldn't be bad for me to be able to pay for some help, even if I continue to be a volunteer, and maybe I could just work 25 hours instead of 60. So that's my question.
Yes. So what we're feeling with you is that you have a very appreciative community. It's a good community. And so here's a piece to do is we're going to say this, and some of you are also going to feel this in your gut, is be vulnerable and say, this is awkward for me, if it is, to ask for help, but I'm so passionate about, wanting to keep this group going and everything. And so I'd like a couple of people who might volunteer to brainstorm with me ways to manage this group so that I am not using all my time and energy, for free, right? But ask some of the members to join with you and brainstorm. That way you're not making any demands on anyone, or that's what it would feel like to you, or even a begging or any of those kinds of things, saying, but you get vulnerable and say, I need your help. This is what I'm experiencing. And I don't want to stop doing this, but it's more than I can maintain. So let's get together and brainstorm. And so they will be people that will come up with either donations or volunteer. We know Awkwardly Zen is supported by lots of volunteers, and it's beautiful. But it is. And so you just reach out to the community, and we feel it's going to it'll actually bring you tighter together, and people will get excited about being asked to see how you can move your community forward, rather than you carrying the burden all by yourself. Yeah. Beautiful. Is that enough? Oh, there. Is that enough?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. That actually, I was thinking that, so you've basically told me to do what I've been thinking about doing. And I did.
That was your
just one thing that I did do. There was a fellow who was a part of the volunteer group, and he hadn't paid anything for 3 years, and he uses all our services and everything. And it was hard. It's what you said. Tell them that you're vulnerable. Tell them that you don't like doing this. But I finally had to write him a letter and say, please, help out, because it's too much. And so now he actually paid a little bit of money, and he's volunteering more. So it's great.
Yeah,
Thank you. Your answer was
that's
perfect.
a gift for him.
Yes.
That's a gift for him. You have to realize that, because then it gives him an invitation, a need to volunteer if he feels he can't pay more. But that way he then feels like an equal member again, instead of kind of hiding out. So that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Deepa and then Adrienne.
Hello. This topic is really good because this is something that I've been trying to figure out for a while, and so many things can come up, and I was like, what do I ask? But what I been experiencing, or what I was actually contemplating when you were doing the talk, was that conditional receiving, where there's a lot of conditions around receiving that I have. And like, say, suppose you need to work hard for receiving money, or you need to do this, the conditions around receiving, I don't want to receive it. So there is blocks in receiving. And another thing that I can think of is about, like, there's money and love entanglement. There is, like, you can either have money or love, or money is love, so I don't want money because I don't want love. So things like that. So,
Deepa, you described that so beautifully, because there are many, many people caught up in that whole integrated thing. Many people learn early on from parents, for example, if they asked for money before they were, financially independent, and asked for money from their parents, it came with strings. People went to college, for example, and if the parents were contributing to the college education, the parents had a right to tell you how to live your life, those kinds of things. And so what you said is really potent for many people. And so sometimes it is a way of saying, okay, well, I want to, and here's a better word we like. So we were going to say, I want to earn more money, but we don't want to use that word earn, because earning also implies hard work. And so instead, it means you may generate money. I want to generate and attract all that I need. And there's times, like Maureen has so many things on her wish list, and she wants a pile of money right now so she can do it all. And it's not coming that way, but she's also learned that it comes and flows in steps. And so the other thing is the love and money. If that especially gets entangled when we have those money situations with family, right? Because there's love there. Or even in relationships, there are people, more often women than men, that stay in a relationship that may be abusive, or that may not even feel it's ideal for their children, or whatever it is, because they can't see how they would be able to support themselves and their children, or support themselves without. There are also spouses, both sexes, that will hold money over their spouse's head, right? You got to do it my way, or blah, 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 blah. And so that's when people are living with money is power, right? And the only way we disempower that is by, sort of not engaging in that energy exchange in any way, right? So it's like stopping that whenever we can. So what happens is, if you can say, I want to generate more than I need every month. That's a really great, notice how soft it feels, and it feels easier than figuring out how I'm going to make that much this month, or earn that much, or where am I going to get it? But I want to generate this much. And then just be grateful and appreciative. And so it's this whole thing. And again, when Maureen was struggling with lack, she did feel a lot of, it was sort of like she didn't deserve love, because she felt shame. She felt actual shame. When she felt somehow she was doing something bad and wrong by being self-employed and not generating enough in a month to cover her basic expenses. And then she feels guilty because she bought that bottle of wine at the grocery store when she shouldn't have, because she hadn't paid her phone bill yet. Those kind of stupid, demeaning, ineffective thoughts, right? We're just using examples. And it's easier to talk about Maureen because, she can't say no. So, but that. And so it's a matter of, again, we can't kind of, we can't slay the monster with one blow, right? And we say the monster meaning all of these feelings and thoughts and beliefs about money. And again, go back to something small that you can do. Another thing, in fact, one of the principles about tithing that comes from a church is interesting, because, there are some churches where it's an expectation, And one of the church organizations, Maureen was told, they expect 10% of all of their members' gross income, not their net, right? So there's even these kind of expectations. And as Miriam was talking about, different with the Jehovah's Witness and some of the other churches, but there are also churches that ask people to tithe and to support the church. And there's a principle there, but what happens is when it's in an expectation or an action, it feels often like a burden or an obligation, right? What happens, the spirit of tithing is the idea that when we give freely without any discomfort, it activates within us the trust that all will be provided. And so this spirit of tithing is a beautiful concept when it's not, what's the word we want to say? Well, the word's coming out that'll, anyhow, Maureen didn't want to use the word, but corrupted by organized religion, but that's the word that came out in her head. So she's not going to fight it. But the idea is every time we gift money, and it doesn't have to be just to a church, it can be gifting money is literally an affirmation that you trust that that amount or more will be available for you, that you will have what you need. So anytime, so Maureen one day, a few months ago, was coming out of a parking structure off to see her physical therapist. And there was she's assuming a homeless person with a bunch of bags around them, asleep in the corner of the entranceway. And she looked down at this man and she just felt this urge. It was really interesting because it was not and she rarely gives money to people like begging at the street corners, homeless people or whatever, because it doesn't feel right to her, because she doesn't want to perpetuate some of that. So what she has done, but what she did is she actually looked at this man and she just felt something in her heart. So she took a $20 bill out of her wallet. He was sleeping and she tucked it in under him. He didn't even wake up or anything, but she tucked it in where it would be safe and not too visible. And she walked away. And that just felt so good. And so when you get an opportunity or feel a little nudge to do something like that, you are literally breaking down any lack programming by just gifting something like that. And so it's like, especially when it feels spontaneous. So another kind of gifting story. So Maureen, actually, there's many people who are struggling for all sorts of reasons. And on one side, you could also argue that, well, the people who are homeless, they just struggle with their lack consciousness and you can't change it. It's like you can't fill a vacuum, right? If they're in that place, or whether they're dealing with addiction or mental illness or whatever. But there's still compassion for them. But Maureen doesn't like to just necessarily give money out of feeling like I should. But what she did do around Christmas one year is she bought some $20 gift cards for places like Subway restaurants and things like that. And her intention was that some of the people that are begging at the street corner at the stoplight kind of thing by the freeway on-ramp, and she thought, well, she'd have gift cards to give them. But this one guy that she recognizes, she's assuming he's, uses a lot of drugs because he's nodded out cold a lot of the time. But she thought she'd give him a gift card. Well, for months, she just never stopped when he was there in a place that would be able for him to give it. So it was just stuck in her wallet. And she was pulled up to a gas station. She was pumping her gas. And this toothless, or almost toothless woman who looked very homeless came up to her and she says, please, could you share anything? And Maureen said, I'm not going to give you any money, but hold on, I have something for you. And she pulled out the Subway card out of her wallet and said, here, I can give you this. And this woman's face lit up. She says, oh my God, I love their meatball sandwiches. And it was just like, again, a light, right? And so it wasn't out of any, I've got more than them, I should, or anything like that. It was literally, so when you can do little things like that, if all you did was give $10 a month somewhere, right? That the people that raised you might think is frivolous, right? Or something, right? You want to kind of go against the grain a little bit and feel a little guilty pleasure with what you do. when you're sharing appreciation or being kind and compassionate with your money. But every act of giving in some way, and it could be giving to a charity, it doesn't have to be someone homeless or whatever, but any act of giving, when it's done without any sense of obligation or should, and it feels good, then you are affirming your own abundance. And that is the true spirit of tithing. So that came from somewhere. We don't know if that was your question or not. So Deep, is there anything else?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, Kat.
Okay, Adrienne is back with a question.
All right.
And then Michelle. So we have about 10 minutes left, just so you know.
Okay, thanks.
I'll make mine quick. And you have touched on this a little bit, but it has come up. It's obviously tax season. So this one is kind of relevant. My partner is male, has a lot of resentment around taxes. We have enough money to pay the taxes, but it's still very resent-based. Like he waits until the last moment to get organized to pay it. On tax day, he'll just nonchalantly kind of say like, oh, I'll file an extension. It doesn't matter. IRS isn't going to come after me. And a teacher recently told us, like, give the dollars a job, send out those taxes with instructions that these dollars I'm spending go to support the parks, they support the roads, the infrastructure. And so I was so excited to share this with him. And he did that practice and was like, I hope my taxes make a great military attack drone. And was like, okay, that is not the point. So just any thoughts on getting past the resentment of taxes?
Well, it's when someone is attached to their perspective, we can't necessarily change that very easily, right? That's one of the challenges, is they have to be where they are. However, one of the other things that Maureen started working with, and she feels really good about this, and this was something that just came up for herself. And she said, I want to live. And it was because of the shame that she felt when she was late paying a bill or something like that, or, borrowing on a credit card to cover something, because she was feeling this shame. And instead, she started working on financial integrity. And so what happens then is, because she realized when she was doing one of her tax returns, is she realized that she could claim something that was actually personal, but she could probably get by with classifying it as a business expense. And then she stopped herself, and she actually added up how much that deduction would end up affecting her bottom line on her what taxes she owed. And it was maybe $40, $50, right? And she thought, am I willing to compromise my integrity by fudging on my taxes for $50? No, because my self-respect is much greater than that. And so you don't want to get to a debate about taxes, but what you shared, the other teacher shared, is yes, hold your intention, because yes, you can whine and complain. We can all whine and complain about how much goes to military, how much goes for all sorts of things that we don't want to support necessarily. And that's, part of our, whole political process. But at the same time, every road we drive on, every national park we go to, there are so many things that we do get benefit from. And so again, appreciation, instead of resentment, we flip it to appreciation. And so you were right on track with that. It's just, yes, as we pay our taxes, I absolutely want to support this. And I'm not going to worry if a percentage doesn't go there and goes somewhere else, because in the grand scheme of things, my thoughts, my energy, my intent are more powerful than other people's actions. Did you guys hear that? That was good. That came from somewhere. My thoughts, my power, my intent, my energy has more power than other people's actions. And so that's kind of in line with the concept about the collective consciousness of the people who are living in ease and abundance on the planet, that held enough energy of abundance to counter the lack, that we didn't have to go through a full collapse. So that was it. That good? Yeah. Great. Okay.
Val commented in the chat, I think of the employees and their families, even if I don't want to support that particular business or government entity, that helps me. I just think that I'm helping pay their
Beautiful.
salaries.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. You can always find something to feel good about with something. If we're spending money, there used to be a rubber stamp from someone that used to invoice people. This is way back when we mailed checks all the time and stuff. And it was really like, please pay this on time. Please pay me so I can pay them so they can pay you. It was a really cute little stamp. And so it's that too. When we hoard and hang on to money, in a sense, when it feels like we're hoarding and hanging on out of fear, we're literally squeezing off the flow. When we let it go and take care of it. And it's a dance between trust and anxiety. If you have lack experiences, and if it's not lack, it's still, people can have enough and still have all sorts of anxiety and fear around it. So it is a practice. But one thing we have to remember, we weren't taught in school that we have choice of what thoughts we think. Thoughts will bubble up in our mind, or a thought will come in reaction to something we see or hear, right? However, if we have a thought that feels heavy in us, we don't have to continue down that path. We can stop it. We can take a whole nother, I got to focus on something else. Or we can flip it if it's not too big of a charge and think of something positive or something that we're grateful about on that topic. So that ties in. Thanks, Kat.
Okay. Michelle, did you want to share this, what you wrote to me, or I could share it? Ask you to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to expound a little bit on something that Maureen was saying about, giving money to family, especially with no strings. Last year, my son, it was almost like he was being pushed out of Colorado after 3 years, and he'd been away from the island for over 30 years. This is a child who's now 48 years old, by the way, and starting over again. And last year I was able to send him enough money for a plane ticket, enough money to get his car shipped. And then after he got here, I sent more money to him for, getting on your feet money. And it just felt so, I'm a little overwhelmed. Sorry, just thinking of this memory, but just feeling so overwhelmed that I was in a position that I could do this. Because we ate our fare of welfare cheese when he was a child. We shopped at Goodwill. I didn't have the money back then when he was little. And
Michelle,
now we do.
Thank you.
So
I just want to let you know we've only got a couple minutes, so I wanted to make sure anyone else had a question.
I just wanted to say that to be able to do it with no strings is such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your heartfelt sharing. That was beautiful. Thanks. So, any other questions? Last call. Okay. Thank you so much. You've been the energy of this group is beautiful. I can feel it and love it. And so, okay, yes. And a reminder, if you would like to receive my newsletter with my free intuitive gatherings, just put your email in the chat and I will add you to my newsletter list, and one will come out in about a week or so. I don't bombard you, but there's things about Reiki, there's things about intuitive gatherings and a variety of other things that come up. So, and if you get tired of them, you just unsubscribe. I don't take it personally, so it's fine. Anyhow, and be sure to feel free to take advantage of my friends and family rate if you would like to have a private session. And again, email me rather than booking on the online website, and that'll make things a little easier. I'm just so grateful to have all of you present and love this. I love this community. So thanks. Maybe I'll be back again and do something else. And if you have a request for something, let some of the people know. And I'm happy to connect with you guys anytime. It's wonderful. Thanks.
Thanks,
you, Kat.
Maureen, for coming. Of course, we're going to have you back. We look forward to your next event, although we don't know what it is. And
yeah, it'll be about intuition. It'll be about intuition.
Great, great.
Well, the one I'm doing, but yes, the next one that I do for you guys, I don't know what it'll be.
Okay, well, thanks for coming, everyone, and please check on the Awkwardly Zen meetup site to see our upcoming events. We do have a Zen Zoom tomorrow night, I know. And then we have our regular Zen Zooms throughout the week and special programs. And I don't have a list in front of me, but you can find them easily on Meetup. Anything to add, Valerie or Darlene? Are we good?
Okay, nothing.
Just thank you, Maureen. This was wonderful.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's fun. I just love doing this stuff, especially when I go into my intuitive place, but I never know what's going to be said. So it's amazing.